to the Bloody legs I sent ala Kenyon Butanika Papa Tota Kuko Malaka Pogani Toto Noktia Akola Papa Kenyon Takuko Suya Bakalukin Yoko Gala basoe, para suyeso delikwa, sokendo kwani akto, suta umuto, so walo takubaka, wala kisuri tu suta umuto. Ora lula to the Bloody legs I sent ala Kenyon Butanika Papa Tota Kuko Malaka Pogani Toto Noktia Akola Papa Kenyon Takuko Suya Bakalukin Yoko Kodame, to Gala Basso, Rassieso Delikwa, Sokendo Kwani Akto, Suta Umuto, so Walo Takubaka, Wala Sori to Suta Umuto, Suya, Bakalukin Yoko. Kodame, to Gala Basoe, para suyeso delikwa, sokendo kwani akto, suta umuto, so walo takubaka, wala kisuri tu suta umuto, wala kisuri tu suta umuto.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Just checking, can everybody hear me and see me? If you're in Zoom, write that in the chat. Wonderful. Hello and welcome to our virtual celebration of Karen New Year, Karen Era 2760. I'm Tasneem Rock and I am here with Thora Bready I, and we are going to be your MCs for today's celebration. Now, although we are meeting virtually, we are here in Australia celebrating Karen New Year on Indigenous land, and we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So everyone, wherever you are, can you please now be upstanding for the virtual raising of the Karen flag? Wonderful. Everyone, please now be seated. So again, welcome honoured guests, friends and leaders from other ethnic groups from Burma, friends from Australia and all around the world. Thank you for joining us for this virtual Karen New Year celebration. And as you know, every year the Sydney Karen community and our friends gather normally around this time for sports, song, dances, and of course, lots of speeches. And we would like to thank our keynote speakers, Paul Power, CEO of the Refugee Council of Australia, Melissa Monteiro, the CEO of CMRC, and Chris Sidoti, human rights lawyer. We'll also be hearing from our Karen elders, Mahn John Rock, Saul Win U, and Mahn Orlando. And we have some great entertainment recorded for you today. Bready, did you want to say anything at this stage?
Silva Bakona de Bacola, the Niyai, Samalako, Yanisoto, Nivaraki, Tony, Pusini, no, but that to Lebadamal, Malagognon, Lonia name, Milako, Torbinia, did the Bogota Huda no? Put the name, Silva Bakona, Lebaco, the Niyai, Losada, but Amalago Bogno, Nitodone, Corny, the Mediba, the Niyai, COVID-19 or pandemic could done it by Malagodi doilo, what a boyko, the Benabutilo, no? Kodani, but the Bapola that Nia no did about Tabapola Dadoni, Tagaluko Lequeo, Tadugita, Tagali, Tao the part, the regular body power of Masani, the Nia of Madaniva, what of Sumna, Sunya, Midine, Bukama, or Dido, Didola, Buki, Mark, the Tiva, one image of Sumna, for a Bakona, the Papola, the letter Huda Pon of Ne, in Bedaquemilo.
Thanks, Bready. So we do miss seeing everyone in person. I can see a lot of people on the Zoom call, so it's lovely to see your faces there. We, of course, miss the beautiful flower arrangement from Mint Nhi and the amazing food. So we're just going to have to imagine that we can smell mohinga or coconut chicken cooking. And maybe where you are, you actually can smell some delicious Karen food cooking. And for those of us who can't, we wish we could send some to you. So some of you are joining us on Zoom and some are watching on Facebook. So wherever you are, whatever suburb you are in or what city, can you let us know in the comments on Facebook and in the chat on Zoom, because we'd love to know where you're watching from. And please feel free to use the chat in Zoom and the comments in Facebook to talk to each other and to talk to us. If you are on Facebook, please like and share this live stream and like our page, Karen New Year Sydney as well. For those in the Zoom, we have a virtual Zoom background. We've posted that in the chat. So if you also want to have a background like this, you can download that as well. So this is our first pandemic. And for the Karen New Year Sydney Committee, it's our first time running a virtual event. So those of you in Zoom, you will be muted unless you are asked to unmute. And if you don't want to appear, make sure your camera is turned off. So people will be tuning in from lots of different devices and different internet connections. If you do find the playback is getting a little poor, you may get a clearer view if you minimize the screen, or you could try watching the live stream on Facebook. And if you have any sound issues, try plugging in your headphones or adjusting the volume on your device as well. And we'll be posting this recording as well on Facebook and on YouTube later. Bready, would you like to say anything at this point?
Away, don't tell me what the pilot and up now, Colawani, let's say, but with a sumo. I don't name me about microphone to pay a pillow, but then I go to the Kokura. I can't let the quota did with power net. I got a carry on my Southern again, but hearing up a corner, they love or cause you that up a Malabo, Malako, Cognor, and Nitalata, put up on a novel when I were corner, Tabula.
So we'd like to show our online guests some of the behind the scenes footage and give you a look at the energy involved in the preparation for last year's Karen New Year, when the bushfire smoke was still around us, just to get us in the mood for the feeling of Karen New Year. Bready, do you want to also introduce the video?
We about part of what about the color of my book with the name, when they do the Bukidi Quad corner, Mahora, Kilesi, Dagomula Bukidi, know that.
Lupuedo tae tambole yo Padito na hoko kaya tiba
Nahiya tani kami polo Mita puno dune platole
Ta ero ena tomo Ta temuti ta koro Baka elo ta tula ta ti chupa kwa Lene lo ayi tuwe O sola yuta kipu Nakatima ta e ono ya So sweet no Tena tura na hisukita e hosi lubana
Moving holy you die good dona Doso takuro glowing moving no so
Ta era ena tomo Ta tamuti ta koro Baka elo ta tula ta ti chupa Lene lo ayi tuwe O sola yuta kipu Nakatima ta e ono ya So sweet no Ta ti chu papa lene lo ayi tuwe o sola yuta kipu Nakatima ta e ono ya So sweet ta era ena tomo Ta tamuti ta koro Baka elo ta tula ta ti chu papa Lene lo ayi tuwe o sola yuta kipu Nakatima ta e ono ya So sweet
Awesome. Well, thank you, Chris Moo, for sharing that short video to show what we would normally be doing to organise and begin. And you can see more of Chris's video production work at CMS TV on YouTube. And hopefully we can gather again next year without a pandemic or bushfire smoke. You could see at the very end of that clip the lines of Karen preparing to enter with the Karen and Australian flags. And they represented all different types of Karen, Sagor and Po Karen, and the younger generation and our elders as well. We would now like to introduce Mahn John Rock, convener of the Karen New Year 2760 celebration Sydney. John Rock is a Karen national from Myanmar. He is on the executive committee of the Australian Karen Organisation and a member of ARCAN, the Refugee Community Advocacy Network in New South Wales. He is the founder of Jacobin, the Joint Advocacy Committee of Australian Burma Ethnic Nationals, which monitors the peace processes in Myanmar, refugee return issues and refugee protection in host countries. John serves as an organisational member on the board of the Refugee Council of Australia, representing the AKO. He is also the chairperson of Friends of TCI Australia, which supports the work of T. Thambia Christian Institute, a higher learning institute in a remote region in Myanmar. Bready, would you also like to introduce John?
Yeah, simply at the so they do simply was a criminal where our take the video put take the book with me Kanyani Satana. But simply was lower to Sudan glacier by Kelabula. Not all the canny do away do he did the Yabaharo Manjaro, now where Kevada Bamba da the blue camera when my stood a little by the women the blue canya for the little about what I can eat. Di beti nya bali to ne awara ne tau klese blue car no ta hilo da le kanyo ko te pha ko la ta le tho ko blue car mo le TCN ne ke ba ji le ba kanyo lo Australia we ne ka we ma ko da le ke khale ke mo ko da be sli ba do ma ke ne be tu lo kho se wa da di ma joro la we ke wa da ta ko he khoi no ko le open space mo.
Distinguished guests, my fellow Karens, ladies and gentlemen. On this auspicious occasion, may I welcome you all to our celebration of the Karen New Year 2760 and wish you a happy Karen New Year. I would like to first acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are having our celebration and pay my respect to their elders, past and present. I acknowledge our special guests, Melissa Monteiro, CEO, Community Migrant Resources Center, Paul Power, CEO, Refugee Council of Australia. I'd like to welcome Zari and Sandra Bamji. Zari is Director, Road to Mandalay Education Foundation, and Chris Sadoti, Executive Committee Member, Human Rights Council of Australia. As we all know, 2020 or 2759 in our current era has been a challenging year for everyone. We have suffered the drought, bushfires, and then the coronavirus, which is still very much here. There have been terrible loss of lives, instances of mental health issues, loss of jobs, and serious economic downturn. At the same time, though, we have also witnessed demonstrations of tremendous courage, resilience, generosity, selflessness, and community spirit among citizens. We have learned lessons during this period, enabling us to adapt and work together, whether it be the federal or state government levels, through the various public services, local governments, and neighborhood communities. We have adopted new ways of working, and there has been a spike in the use of technology as parents and children have had to work from home. There has also been an increased awareness of the risks and dangers of climate change. Young people, too, have had to adapt to these new conditions. And it is interesting to hear what some of the UNICEF young reporters have to say during this pandemic. 18-year-old Branislav writes, "It taught me to love, to listen, to care, to respect, and to help." And Rihanna, who is 19, says, "We learn to live every day. We choose the path we will take." She reminds us that the best life lessons is learned during hard times and when we make mistakes. I think 90-year-old Eva's observation is most insightful. She asks, what is it that will come out of all this? Equality, she says. She adds, this situation has shown us that we are all the same, regardless of our religion, culture, customs, whether we are rich or poor. The virus simply does not choose. It connected us in a way. It showed us that we should all stick together. During this chaos, while many of us are in a panic, it showed us the weight of humanity. It reminded us who we are. Maybe the world will finally change. Well, this reminds me of the oft repeated sentence, we are all in this together. We certainly are. So then, I would like us to give a few thoughts to all those people around the world who contracted the coronavirus, to offer our prayers for so many, including our own people who perished, and to express our condolences to their loved ones, wherever they may be. During this crisis, refugees and asylum seekers face particular vulnerabilities. This is sobering when you reflect that there are 1.1 million refugees from Myanmar, making up nearly 92% of all the displaced persons in the Southeast and South Asia regions. There are specific concerns here, including maintaining safety in overcrowded camps and detention centers, lack of access to countries of asylum or resettlement due to border closures, and lack of income support for those who have lost their jobs. I would like us to also reflect on the plight of ethnic groups such as Rakhines, Chins, and Karens in Myanmar. They have been facing not only the threat of COVID-19, but also the relentless attacks from the Burma army, even during this time of crisis, displacing tens of thousands of people. We must, of course, not forget the huge gratitude that we owe to those people who worked on the front lines, risking their lives day in, day out, to perform essential services to the community, and to those researchers who have been working tirelessly to produce vital vaccines in so short a time. To them, we say, we appreciate your efforts and sacrifices, and we thank you. You know, in the early days of 2020, when COVID-19 hit the world, we were like a ship caught in a freak storm. We literally didn't know what hit us. What sort of storm is this? How widespread and how long is it going to last? The captain and crew were in a daze. They were uncoordinated, and the ship was temporarily lost at sea, rudderless. But through 2020, our ship regained some momentum, some direction. We learned more about the terrible storm. We developed maneuvers to adapt to it. And the captain and crew regained composure and started to work together again. As we move into the new year, although the storm is still raging, we know we can weather that storm as long as we are pulling together as a team. We also know that at the end of this long and hazardous journey, we will certainly come into a welcoming safe harbor where we will rest, we will recover, and we will thrive again. My best wishes to you all in the new year. Please enjoy the celebration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mahn John Rock. We now have a special musical item from Burma. This is a recording from Karen Generations performing the song Pani Totho live in Yangon just this week on Wednesday. Bready, would you like to introduce it as well?
Yeah, so the Silva gave the team on Jomo, Lawe he no pala, Korean year, that's the good CK, Silva to Makeda, blessed the Lectoracani, Murabudo, Puganahuba, Tadune, Toracano, special couple of the local of your honor, or a couple of the lab, no, fanny memo, who then never another quarter of Qualcosa.
Thoto head to Holly can you put the papo tota
and you not a ya ta được lơ khó cơ nhỏ cơ lũ khẽ lơ bơm mi đó bùe oh hay khi cô ga chờ bao lo pha đó lo bri ra từ đi
cho lo đưa ta đưa ta so ta free đi nó chơi ya lue tốt cho lo đưa ta đưa ta so ta free đi nó chơi ya lue tốt khu phố đi ra mà sơ so thuê cơ nhau cơ lư
lỡ ta được lỡ khó cơ nhỏ cơ lũ khẽ lơ bờ mi đó bùe oh hay khi cô ga đỡ bao lo pha đó lo bri ra từ đi
ta so ta free đi nó chơi ya lue tốt cho lo đưa ta đưa ta so ta free đi nó chơi ya lue tốt khu phố hi ra mà sơ so trai cần nhỏ cơ lư cho lo đưa ta đưa ta so ta free đi nó chơi ya lue tốt cho lo đưa ta đưa ta so ta free đi nó chơi ya lue tốt khu phố hi ra mà sơ so trai cần nhỏ cơ lư khu phố hi ra mà sơ so trai cần nhỏ cơ lư.
So thank you very much to Karen Generations and Chloe Koi Music and composer Daipo for letting us use their performance during our celebration. And if you love that performance, we will share the link to the original video in the chat at the end of our event. Brady, did you want to say anything now?
Yeah, basically, where Daipo mo, whether he no doing na wala say oila, le tatawi po mo. Current generation the power the so the thought about thousand about like you that we put the the do malo.
Wonderful. So we now have a message of felicitation from Pado. Oh no, I thought I was muting myself. We now have a message of felicitation from Padoza Porasane, who is the chairperson of the KNU Concern Group in Karen State. Pado Norza Porasane is the former chairperson of the Karen National Union and is a long-standing KNU leader and has served the organisation as a school teacher, women's rights activist, general secretary and vice chairperson. Brady, would you like to introduce the video as well?
Okay, because nahu ko thought ga ta the sunya the kan mi wara ta do se so wa khaplo bado si wara sai mo awe chi ba le wa mi khuna ga la ge da block na we se ti li lo bwa ko li ko du le ta na kha kha bu ko la ke ni be hi la su do se we su bu le to hi ba wa ni lo
Happy Korean New Year. Asokatani yada siblu ba AKO Australia kanyo takrakru kunati de pa le kwemuya le yakato sagi sawa ba kanyo hola ko Australia le tamala kapo ke kanyo ni thata ki kitonu ke khusi ni le mutiniya ya khoni lo le tania khu le ki kito nu ke khusi ni kanyo ni thata tini ni ye ta sagi sawa ma ke kanyo phoko ade ola ko Australia apu le kanyo ni thata tabla nya ni khasoneti le ta soi sowa khasoneti le ta gita ba ta osu kle ta aku opwe bu pleda ta su asato bu pleda ta ko ta go aklu klu do ne ba ta ri ba to do ne ba ta ta ho to le ko mu do le ta ko ta le ki ki thu nu ki ya khusin ni ta la to ya pu ni no ba ta khu le pa khu ne ba kanyo ni thata tabla nya ni no pa me o lo mu lo pha lo ba ta le ta lo a di apotana ke ni do ba tin nya le ba kanyo pho ko khu de o le ta lo ko pu de ne bu klesa ma la ka po ba ke kanyo ni thata tabla nya i khu ni do me ta la ta ka po le ba kanyo pho ti de pha pa phla tha di pa ta di pe me bwa de ka lu atu te di we da khu ni do ba siblu ba ke kanyo pho ko ga de o le ta lo ko pu de le ma phla tha ke kanyo ata set ta la ma phla tha ke kanyo alu la thu thu nu ti de pha phele ta ma la ka po ke kanyo ni thata tabla nya i ni no di pe me kanyo de ka lu atu ni pe me o lo mu lo pha lo pa ta le chi ko a be apotana ke do pa ka sa kha lo pa ta no pa ko shi ka lo pa su do pa ko klesa to ko wa da di to do pa kanyo pho de kli ke do so tha wa da le pa ta o mu pu do pa kanyo de kli ni ke thu phle tha ko ke le ta sa ti man ne ke thu phle tha ke le ta ma ma to pu do ko o mu te ble ba ke di pa de kli atu me wa da pa ta sa mi la o me wa da pa ta ke to he ba sa ta le ni thata de bla nya i de pa ke le ke do da sunya a ni no mo pa ko follow pa su do le ko khu sunya su pa ta ma ne apu de le ta pwe de ki ta bli do ma no.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Pado Zaporisane, for your message of felicitation. Bready?
W do male ba na hu ba ba awe ba do mu bora sain no awe da do hi ba ba da se se wa se ko ba le ni tha to blo nya le ki do nu ya khu si de ni nya ko la si lo do ma lo.
So we now have another entertainment piece. It's a recording of a Karen Don't Dance performance. Originally, our dancers planned to make a whole new performance for us this year, but unfortunately, because of COVID restrictions, rehearsals and gatherings were cancelled. As many of you know, the Don't Dance is performed at various celebrations and ceremonies throughout the year. It's a dance that requires cooperation, harmony and discipline, just like Karen culture. And it's a way for Karens to come together and affirm their cultural identity. Bready?
Okay, ne bagla su ta kwa ko to ko wa kanyo ta ge li mo le ko le ta si mo awe kanyo don't dance mo kwa to ko ro me se ko de me ta no ko ba me da ta le do ba su ro okay ne ba ki kwa ga da ki no ko ro ba ma la ko to ko nyan to ni nya ko mo kwa to ko no.
Thank you to our beautiful dancers, and thank you Saul Win U for this recording of last year's Karen Don't Dance. We now have the keynote address from Paul Power, the CEO of the Refugee Council of Australia, the national umbrella body for agencies working with refugees and asylum seekers since 2006. Since 2012, he has served in leadership roles with the Asia Pacific Refugee Rights Network, currently being a board member and chair of its Australia, New Zealand and Pacific Working Group. And like many of our honoured guests today, Paul has been a guest many times at Karen New Year and has worked alongside the Karen community for many years. Brady, would you also like to introduce Paul?
Possibly ba awe kanyo ata ge lila bukwi mo ni le pada do kha ta bisilu atu pada sala uglese pa khuma ko ro pala to khurme di pakele no ke ne begle su ta re ta kle do kha ni me we na le ba ge do la le pho phawe ba kha le ba ko ba khe gro pha do ga ba ma da ta bichi ba le wa da ne ma da lu da pho ama lo ba nyo do we di pha lo lo so ya ma uglese da ama ba kha lo ba ko ba khe di ba ko do ke ni ke lo da su we su la do da ko no.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you, Tasneem, and thank you to the Australian Karen Organisation for the invitation to speak today. And on behalf of the Refugee Council of Australia, I wish all the members and friends of the AKO a Happy New Year for 2760 in the Karen era and 2021 in the Western calendar. I would also like to acknowledge, as Tasneem and John have done, that we are meeting in Australia on land that has been in the custodianship of traditional owners for tens of thousands of years. And today I'm speaking from outer southwestern Sydney on the land of the Tharawal people, whose past, present and emerging leaders I acknowledge and pay my respects to. The Refugee Council is pleased to have such a close working relationship with AKO. John Rock was recently re-elected for another two-year term on the Refugee Council Board, elected by the members of the Refugee Council, and I look forward to continuing to work with him and AKO members on the concerns of the Karen people and the issues which are most important to people who have experienced forced displacement. The AKO has much to celebrate with the many achievements of Karen people who've made Australia their home and Karen people who've been born and raised in this country. And it's appropriate that as part of the Karen New Year celebrations, that these celebrations of achievement continue to occur. However, I am always impressed by the extent to which Australia's Karen community continues to care about the situation of Karen people internationally. Particularly those who've been forcibly displaced within Myanmar and to neighbouring countries in Asia. Members of the AKO, and John Rock in particular, provide an excellent example of how members of a refugee diaspora can speak up for those who continue to suffer and have limited opportunities to have their voices heard, either in their country of origin or in countries of asylum. John has, as people know, John has done an outstanding job in bringing people together from different communities through Jakaban, the Joint Advocacy Committee of Australia-Burma Ethnic Nationals. This gathering enables people from the Karen, Rakhine, Chin, Kachin, Shan and other ethnic communities from Myanmar to share information and concerns about the situation facing their communities inside and outside of Myanmar. John has also connected Jakaban with members of other refugee communities through his participation in the New South Wales Refugee Communities Advocacy Network. And he's also personally taken the concerns and ideas raised through Jakaban to Parliament House in Canberra and to UNHCR in Geneva. In 2018, I participated with John and Margaret Rock in a scoping mission on behalf of the Refugee Council of Australia and the Asia Pacific Refugee Rights Network. And we visited the Thai-Burma border and Kuala Lumpur to hear directly from the Karen, Karenni and Chin refugees living there about their perspectives on their current situation and the future. John and Margaret have also visited Delhi and areas of Karen state to do the same, to listen to refugees and IDPs. It's clear that much needs to change within Myanmar and within the principal countries of asylum, being Thailand, Malaysia and India, before many Karen people and people from other ethnic minorities are to have the opportunity to live at even a basic level of freedom, a life where they're not constantly worried about the activities of the Tatmadaw within Myanmar or the various authorities in countries of asylum. It is also clear that the path to a more prosperous and free future for Myanmar must be one that includes and respects Myanmar's ethnic minorities and treats people as citizens with a say in the future of the nation. This second 5-year term of the National League for Democracy government will determine whether Myanmar makes any progress at all towards these goals. For a diaspora organisation like AKO and an ally organisation like the Refugee Council of Australia, our roles are to ensure that the Karen people and members of other ethnic minorities who are struggling to live in freedom in Myanmar and in countries of asylum continue to have a strong voice in Australia. There is much that we can do to raise these concerns with the Australian government, with UNHCR and other UN bodies, and to work with networks like the Asia Pacific Refugee Rights Network and the region's new refugee-led network, the Asia Pacific Network of Refugees. Together, we can ensure that the voices of displaced people are heard as clearly as possible. The path to change in Myanmar is clearly very, very difficult, and ultimately we cannot ensure that the change desired by the Karen people and other ethnic minorities is achieved. But what we can do is to play our part in helping the Karen community's concerns to be heard clearly by those who hold the levers of power. I look forward to continuing to work with AKO and the other communities represented through the Jacobin network to ensure that we play the most constructive role we possibly can. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Paul, for being with us today, and thank you for your keynote speech. Brady?
Silua Palmer, Silua Mr. Paula, where he about data Bakara, Babakoba came all over Masila, Australia, may Isha, the baby, quarter of Silua Domala.
Fantastic. Thank you to our dancers and also to Uncle Joshua for providing that footage from last year's Karen New Year. I love hearing the rhythmic snaps of the poles coming together. And I think maybe the one advantage of having the performance recorded this year is that no one's ankles was at risk. Bready?
Silva, what was a level the lesser hill of the letter lawyer. Koda never see was Paddy issue our lesser don't about our moon the paid or but she will work idea about whom other cohort of tin or a love book between the killer of the Pama. But Sudamala Sunyan Nibagama anyway, but then if see no corner about whom other.
We are now delighted to introduce our next video. This is our next keynote speaker, Melissa Monteiro, the Chief Executive Officer of the Community Migrant Resource Centre, the CMRC. Melissa has over 25 years of experience within the community sector and has managed the CMRC for the last 20 years and works closely with community leaders in Western Sydney to create greater social impact. In fact, she has been a long-term friend of communities from Burma and would be known to many who have attended our live events in the past. She's also currently the chair of the Settlement Council of Australia and on the board of Anti-Discrimination New South Wales. And congratulations, Melissa. She's also the recent winner of the Pro Bono Impact 25 Award and the Pro Bono Judges' Choice Award Collaborator. Bready?
Kane Basiliva, Buera, Melissa, Hodani, I can't be here, so I work to Bambasan again. I want to me for the Gala Hill, the community with a Pai Basilima, Mara, Bahale, CMRC, the one Batala Arab community, Bahara, Losada Burmese community in Aldema, Paanya, for the Basilia Aldoma, for the Cape Hill, and Sudasu was below to that in law.
To our distinguished guests and members of the Karen community, I would first like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, their elders past and present, and I'd also like to acknowledge John Rock, Sol Lewin Oo, and others on the committee. To all you Karen elders of the community and to everyone, a warm and a very happy Karen New Year. Thank you for the invitation to speak at today's Karen National New Year celebrations via Zoom. My dear friends, the CMRC is indeed privileged to work with the Karen community. We send our wishes of prosperity to you and your families today on the occasion of the Karen New Year. All over the world, the Karen New Year celebrations are held during the pleasant month of Phayato. You mark the occasion by sounding the Karen horn and drum to maintain the tradition of the Karen New Year until the end of time. We indeed at the CMRC have been fortunate to work closely with the Karen community for over 6 years now through our settlement worker Victor Sawtut. Today my message to you is one of hope. Despite all the uncertainties around the world, in addition to COVID, let us not lose hope. The Karen community have much to celebrate and are one of a number of communities that are contributing in every way to Australia. A very good example, since the first family of Karen refugees arrived in Bendigo, their community has grown to around 1,000. And the study by Deloitte Access Economics and AIMS has estimated that the Karen community have contributed over 60 million to the Bendigo community. This is a wonderful example of communities and individuals working together, no matter who they are or where they come from. If they are given an opportunity and support along their settlement journey, they can prove not only their own well-being and quality of life, but that of the broader community. As part of the settlement support process, the CMRC and STARTS have offered casework, community support, homework support, which we did previously, and assistance to farming and agricultural practices and community gardens and promoting Karen organic products. We continue to work and support the young people and women in the community. We congratulate you and your efforts in maintaining the Karen culture and traditions. We recognize the ongoing humanitarian crisis faced by the Karen people even right now. People both within Myanmar, in Burma and along the Thai-Myanmar border, and the impact it has on the community here in Australia, to you all. We greatly support and endorse the work by the Australian Karen organization, helping in the settlement process as well as in maintaining and building on our social cohesion. There are so many examples of good work that should be celebrated today. I thank Victor from the CMRC, to Gary and Yasmina from STARTS, and to the community volunteers that have brought this about. STARTS and a number of organizations in the community services sector have provided help and motivation to the community to improve their settlement pathways through activities such as sports and seminars, and also the work that is being done through the community gardens and so many information sessions that have been held in the last year, and all the work that has happened with the young people in the last year. I'm grateful for the efforts of the association and the AKO in making a difference in people's lives. You provide these foundations for our new arrivals as they piece together their new lives in a new and unfamiliar country. However, your work and our work is never done and is ongoing in the challenging world we live in. So here's to another year, and one of hope and faith for a better year ahead of us. So friends, on behalf of the Community Migrant Resource Centre and all my colleagues in the settlement sector, I wish the Karen community here and all over the world that are watching via Zoom this wonderful, happy new year to you, and may your families be blessed and flourish in every way. All the best to you for a fabulous 2021. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Melissa, for your keynote speech and your message of hope. And thank you so much for being here and celebrating with us today. Bready?
Malaysia mo lawa to ye ba wa do we pa plas ka ta tu ta o le pa de we pa ko ba ke lo so da gnyok de we de pa lo Australia ya.
We now have greetings from the Karen Youth Sydney and an insight into the year that was for them. So this is an organisation that was established by young Karens for the Karen Youth in Sydney. It's run by volunteers and it's open to all. Bready?
Okay, de let's start regular the economy wera ko le KYS ma me da ba tu ba da sa de pa le Sydney New South Wales ba la wo de le so do po la me da volunteer de pa la me ban ne bu ne le ba ko da na bu ti ba wo de ta so ge so wa do ta le ma ti de de pa mo kwa ga da ke.
Wonderful. A big thanks for the video, KYS, and for the great, and congratulations for the great work you've been doing all year. A big thanks as well to STARTS and CMRC for their support of the KWS. Brady?
Silua KYS Malawe or Dahutage, the Lobatu Batasadi Pawama, or Achiva, or the Dahudagi Panelo, to who put Tawan, Batu Batasadi Silua Domala, the Hill Dale. The Nibuni Leva, who blessed the love the word, but Batasai Power.
I hope you enjoyed that video. I was having a little dance while my to that music while my video was off. It was very enjoyable. So our third keynote speaker is Chris Sidoti with the UN Fact-Finding Mission Report follow-up. Chris Sidoti is an Australian expert on international human rights law, a lawyer and an advocate. He is a former Human Rights Commissioner and former Commissioner of the Australian Law Reform Commission and has held a range of other distinguished posts. So this was recorded on Wednesday during a Zoom meeting between the Australian Karen Organisation and the International Karen Organisation with the Refugee Council of Australia and the Human Rights Council of Australia to discuss the current outbreak of violence in Karen State. Brady?
Okay, because Chibata declaration of economy where I learn what to the senior government where Chris zero team. Kodania, what any matter Bahala UM or Bahala UN part of Loconi, Miss Gopala, aware quad 12 or I thought the Palo Australia may learn international. One hour ago, I can't even keep aware. I thought do the pioneer made a love to me work to no coba, made a meet the main life bar, made a love, but I record her love book with me, turning law. One about what the call where he balanced to learn Plonyama.
And so, Chris, could I ask you to give us some input on an update on your work and your perspective on Myanmar generally, an overview of it?
Just a few short comments, John, and thank you for inviting me to do so. As I indicated, the fact-finding mission finished its work September 2019. And so the formal side of my work with the Human Rights Council, the UN Human Rights Council, was completed at that time. But there have been a number of initiatives that have followed on from the FFM's work. One of the recommendations we made in 2018 related to the establishment of another independent international mechanism that would take over the preparation of prosecutions. And that was established. It got underway September 2019, and so is now operating based in Geneva. It took over all of the files of the fact-finding mission and also has investigators to conduct their own independent investigations. It's not itself a prosecutor. Its role is to prepare prosecution briefs relating to individual perpetrators. And because it's involved in that kind of preparation for prosecution work, it doesn't proceed through public reports as the fact-finding mission did. That's one of the most significant differences between what we did and what they're doing. They do a general report each year on their activities. That is how many files they've got, whether they've conducted investigative missions, but they give no information at all about their findings, about those that they are recommending for prosecution, any of that kind of detail. So that is continuing. Also continuing and continuing confidentially are the international court actions. One is in the International Criminal Court, where the prosecutors are continuing their investigation arising from the expulsion of the Rohingya in 2017. The ICC's brief is very limited. It does not extend to the Karen situation. The reason for that is that Myanmar is not a party to the Rome Statute that established the International Criminal Court. And the court has jurisdiction only because Bangladesh is a party, and that means only because the expulsion of the Rohingya into Bangladesh brought into the picture a country that had accepted the Rome Statute. That's not the situation with the Karen. Thailand's not a party to the Rome Statute either. And so activities on that side of the country are outside the scope of what the ICC can do. And then third is the International Court of Justice, which you all would be aware commenced action brought by Gambia under the Genocide Convention. That resulted in interim orders at the beginning of last year that were very strong orders relating to the preparation of a genocide case, and in particular, the need for Myanmar in the interim to report on a 6-monthly basis. Myanmar has submitted its first report, but that has not been made public. So these processes, the investigative mechanism, the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, are all underway, but none of them are resulting in public reports on progress. The two courts will come to a hearing at some point, and it's only at that stage that we'll have any publicity about the situation. So the only other thing that I can point to that is occurring publicly through the UN system is that there is still a special rapporteur on Myanmar. Young Hee Lee completed her 6 years in the mandate last year, and so a new rapporteur has been appointed. Because of the COVID situation, rapporteurs are not travelling at all. And so there's not even been a proposal at this stage for the rapporteur to make a visit to Myanmar. And we have no idea what attitude the Myanmar government will take. Over the last 20 years, the general practice has been that the new rapporteurs are admitted for 2 or 3 years. There's an amazing international fight between the Myanmar government and the rapporteur over the content of the report. And then the rapporteur gets banned from Myanmar for the following 3 or 4 years until the mandate is up. My expectation is that we'll see a similar kind of cycle being repeated this time. And I suspect that we may see the rapporteur being able to go to Myanmar this year and issue a report. And that will be the primary source of information for debate within the UN system coming out of the rapporteur's report. The only other thing that I'd mention, John, is some of the work being done by a number of NGOs following up on the fact-finding mission's special report on the business interests of the Tatmadaw. We recommended not a complete boycott, economic boycott of Myanmar, but certainly economic disengagement from the Tatmadaw. And a significant number of companies are starting to take that seriously, I'm very pleased to say, including some of the major internal Myanmar-owned conglomerates that are starting to distance themselves from the Tatmadaw. We've seen an investigation by Kirin, which is in a partnership with one of the Tatmadaw's holding companies for beer production. They're the largest brewers in Myanmar. And Kirin has been publicly referring to the frustration it's felt in dealing with the Tatmadaw company, so much so that over the last 6 months, it's suspended all dividend payments from Myanmar Brewing until it is satisfied that that money is not being diverted to military purposes. So I think Kirin is playing an important role and has already partially cut the money supply to the military through stopping the payment of dividends. The Danish shipping company Maersk, which is the largest international container shipping firm these days, has announced that it will not permit its containers to pass through any military-owned or controlled ports. So that's a second step. Mind you, I don't know who or where they'll land containers in Myanmar if they're not using military-owned ports. So far as I'm aware, virtually all of the ports are indirectly owned by the military, even though operated by private corporations. But it may be that Maersk is able to put pressure and even put some money, perhaps, into the development of non-military ports in Myanmar. I know as well that a number of sovereign wealth funds are indicating that they will not be investing in future in companies that are in joint venture arrangements with the Myanmar military. And finally, just last week, the World Bank's International Finance Corporation has announced an independent review of its investment ties with a Myanmar company, Orba, which is also in a joint venture arrangement with one of the Tatmadaw holding companies. So it seems to me that the economic pressure is building slowly but surely, and building in the right direction so far as I'm concerned, and that is building in the direction of disengagement from the military economically, while remaining economically active within Myanmar generally. And so I think these are good developments, and there is some evidence that it's starting to have an impact on the Tatmadaw, at least having them feel the pressure of international business concern, although not in any way in relation to its operations on the ground in Myanmar. So I mean that's basically in a nutshell the picture as I see it internationally at this stage.
Thank you very much, Chris, for your contribution to our celebration today and your update on the Independent International Fact-Finding Mission on Myanmar. Bready?
Mr. Chris, where they plan the dinner with Bakara, where the Bakara Chico, could be Yanta, Australia, what a realum, the copy of the Sinagale, Salati, Lepo, the Pahoma, Rabisiva Domala.
Well, we hope you're all having a really good time. Please leave us some comments in the Facebook Live and also in the Zoom chat. We now have another entertainment piece for you. It's going to be a cover song sung by Glory Chit, and Theramu Glory Chit is a very talented singer-songwriter. She lives in Sydney. Bready?
Again, if it's Siliba, where ma? Wako de lem ke pe do higi ba wako de ma bam nu khole ta ma la bo nyan tho taw ni awe pe to live la Facebook ko na mu da su mo mu da su live ba mo ko da na te ni mo to lo khe ne bu le sta re de kle to kha ni a me wa da ba na hu ba da sa u le glory check da le glory check no be Sydney la no ko da ba na do ko na to ko da ta u ko ma
từ cho ta bên nó từ về lập to từ bữa từ chỉ hết khó bé là cho nó ba kia là chỉ là to mình qua cái nhau y lo sẽ vô kẻ cho bờ gò ta cứ từ một từ ba từ bữa từ về chân nó xuống thì ta ở đó mà ta phê ta ở ba chỉ ta lư đâu bueno cần nhớ lư là lo po y lo mà lo po phơ gõ ta mi mà cứ sao cho đó gỡ gỡ thọ bồ bà ya chỉ lo mi to cứ sao xì cho mẹ ba khứ đó tê nhà cứ nhớ phơ ở lư là sao cứ nhớ ba kẻ tê nó thơ mù ba phí phư cho lỡ cha khờ dô qua gà gà nâng mê mà cha chữ gà ta phê ta ở ba chỉ ta lư đâu bueno cần nhớ lư là lo po
What a beautiful voice and a beautiful song. Thank you so much for contributing to our Karenni Year.
Simply glory check. Now tahu ini pada tahu po, makharap padu ni no. Pada ni tatawi misgot, tatawi pula buku patawi dile medise tahu po daro. Silvado malakili po kalama.
We would now like to introduce a new video. This is Saul Win-Oo, the National President of the Australian Karen Organisation, to give us the Karen update. Bready?
Okay, ni bagaimana sudah ada kelihatan kane, bakal kenyang po memisat ni ay ta utan, no. Bola bagaimana hu bawa buci bala, okay, bola Saul Win-Oo, dah mi bola Australia ko dah binya, we babila seno, le Karen Australia Karen Organisation, no.
Ladies and gentlemen, my Karen brothers and sisters, Happy Karen New Year to you all. On behalf of the Karen community Sydney, it is my pleasure to speak to you and to share the Karen update on this Karen New Year, Karen Era 2760. May I first acknowledge the traditional owner of this land on which we are having our celebration and pay my respect to their elder, past and present. The civil war taking place in Burma in the war longest, starting in January 1949. It is astonishing that no significant international attention is paid to this conflict, despite the major humanitarian impact. The horrific human rights abuses committed by the Burmese army in Eastern Burma are well documented. As an initiated approach, ceasefire has been pronounced, and since Udai's announcement to invite ethnic armed groups for the discussion of the ceasefire and peace-building process on 18 August 2011. It is then by the nationwide ceasefire agreement that all ethnic armed groups and Udai's government came together to discuss a political solution, which is to cease civil war and ethnic conflict, striving towards national reconciliation that guarantee long-lasting peace in Burma. Since its establishment and throughout history, the Karen National Union, KNU, has believed that in order to achieve genuine peace and an end to the ongoing civil war in Burma, the underlying political conflict must be solved by the political means, beginning with active and genuine dialogues. Accordingly, the KNU with aligned ethnic groups has met with Burmese government over the years to discuss the possibility of the genuine ceasefire and peace talks. However, during this discussion, the Burmese government and their successor had failed to acknowledge the need to deal with the underlying political crisis driven the conflict, namely addressing the political aspiration of the ethnic nationality for peace based on the national equality and the right to self-determination. Instead, the focus was made to be on the KNU and the Karen National Liberation Army, KNLA, surrendering its weapon and returning to the legal pool without the political crisis being addressed or resolved. Evidently, ceasefire and peace talk have therefore been unsuccessful. By way of negotiation, during the KNU signed NCA agreement in 2015, the KNLA demand the Burmese military to withdraw 17 of its military bases from the Mutra district, Karen state, including Kebu and Lamu Plo, in order to improve the security for the local villages and to facilitate the return of the displaced people to their homeland and village territories. This plea was, however, controversially met, with the Burmese military steadily upgrading and reinforcing its bases, creating more permanent military infrastructure. In early 2018, the Burmese military operation had provoked dozens of armed clashes with troops of the KNLA, which has resulted in the forced displacement of the more than 2,400 people from their land and homes. as the Burmese military is showing no sign of withdrawing from their offensive position, these Korean internally displaced people are now left with the fate of a protracted displacement and severe food deprivation and physical insecurity. Both the KNU and KNLA 5th Brigade has since officially denounced the Burmese military to breaching the term of the ceasefire agreement. They are calling on the Burmese military to cease and withdraw its military operation command and the battalion under them, and prioritize negotiation and political dialogue to guarantee peace and security for the current internally displaced people. On the 6th January 2021, over thousands of people from the 30 villages gathered at 2 locations in Mahn village tract, Duelo Township, Mutra District, Karen State, from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. to express their demand for the Burmese military to stop their attack on the local civilians. The protest led by the villagers from the Lekoti, Nakutha, Metuki, Metu, and Maiwan village tract expressed their suffering due to the action of the Burmese military and call for the current National Union KNU leader, Burmese government, and international community, including United Nations, to take action to help them fulfill their demand. The tension between KNU and the Burmese military for their invasion into the KNU permitted area, the recent clashes between KNLA and the Burmese military in the Brigade 5 area, Maiwan village tract and Duelo Township of Mutra District, Karen State. And at the same time, more troops combined of the Burmese military and PGF were sent into the KNU Brigade 1, Thatong District. Therefore, as a result, over 3,000 villagers from the both area were fleeing from this conflict zone. According to the media from the Misima on the 11th January 2021, that there are 2 major armed clashes between KNLA and Burmese military troops and the Dakoki village and Pakoti village and Pakota village of Chowchi Township, PQ District, KNU Brigade 3 area of Karen State. The children from the primary school and villages were fleeing from the Burmese military attack and hiding in the jungle. This is not only breaching the NCA ceasefire agreement, but also committing human rights violations against the innocent civilians of Burma. As you are aware, our concern for the welfare of the refugee are not limited to the current people within Burma. One of the consequences of the ethnic conflict and religious prejudice or intolerance has been humanitarian crisis in many parts of the country. Over 120,000 Kachin civilians has been displaced by fighting, and over 130,000 Rohingyas are living in a dire condition, and more than 40 camps in Arakan State. Over recent years, thousands more have fled the country. The genuine peace is so far from the reality for these ethnic civilians in Burma. The violence perpetrated on the Rohingya in northern Rakhine State is another example of the ongoing military operation, and so are attacks by the Burmese army on Kachin and Shan and eastern part of the country. The threat of militarization throughout the ethnic state continue with counter-insurgency operation targeting the civilian population in a widespread and systematic manner. We strongly believe the nationwide ceasefire agreement at its currently stand is not in support of the pursuit of the national goal of the Karen and other ethnic nationality, unless and until government withdraw its troops and army bases, there will be a lack of suitable land to use for the livelihood. The recent Burma 2020 election results were announced, with the National League for Democracy NLD won a second-term landslide victory and winning 396 of the 496 contested seats in bicameral parliament. And the NLD won more seats in the 2020 election than the election 2050 when they ousted the military ruling government. The Vivekan NLD requests to 48 ethnic political parties to work together and to seek federal union and end civil war. However, less than 2 weeks after the 2020 general election, fighting has continued to escalate in northern Shan state and eastern Karen state. We urge any government must adhere to its original goal in its election manifesto, which states the 2008 constitution will be amended to guarantee ethnic rights and establish a federal democratic union. As a community, we should try to support in every activity and effort that aim to speak Burma on our way to genuine democracy so that our people can go back to their towns and villages, live in peace, harmony, and prosperity with other people of Burma. Thank you, and may God bless you all.
Thank you, Sol Win U, for the Karen update. If you would like to read this update and other reports that we have the Karen New Year newsletter available to view and download at KarenNewYear.com/newsletter 2760. And I think Thule has put a link to that in the Facebook comments and possibly also in the Zoom. Go ahead, Brady.
Lawe Gatura Bakara Kanyota Dalo Kikamu suddenly Bakura Kovi Dolbinya Gludu Pani Nahuma. Nobasiluva or Duma. Dolblohane Basilva Zigo, I can't be dot do the Yabwa put the Palo where Facebook page name Bahalatulina where or where link with the Kabahara Korean newsletter mobile dot Tinyara Pava the Panadolo open the law or what we do the Yapa corner. No.
So also because we weren't able to meet in person, we weren't able to have the mini markets that we would normally have to raise money for internally displaced persons within Burma and also refugees on the Thai-Burma border. So normally we'd have people selling food and clothes. So this year we have set up an online store where you can buy t-shirts and hoodies and mugs and also donate if you wish, and that's at KarenNewYear.com. Brady?
Okay, ne, but what I declare the Kanye book we did a lot book with the Pani, but my young little food storm, but hard up with a rubber do or the mouth do either the who are close to the city K, well, but again, it never done net over. Come back, couple of pandemic over Malazum, who then did like an can be thought what online more. Online or what than a Palaido Puema, we don't put a good atomic the city K, the online for me on with us. With the law, what a miss got a clear bull up by Plata Masuma, Pita Masula, Bahala, Babacoba, Kerry Pagoma. That is a one by Halata Saint Dora, whether the setup will learn online. When a ballet of the Yapacona, the ballet of Quevenatilla, the ballet of he must clo or sell the Lalo, the Panis of Quevenatilla.
So we have another entertainment video to share with you. This is two very talented young Karens from Sydney who would normally perform live at our events. This is Sapphire Wah and Gaido Cha. Brady?
Again, may what a Sapphire Wah or Gaido Cha, what they call Tawida, the me what I do not account what they mean for that, what I said the Palo, very talented, คนนี้ไปเฮล่าสุดเราได้สิมั้ง
A big thank you to our talented singers for contributing to our New Year's celebration today. Brady? We would now like to recognise the Karen students who have achieved excellence in the past year with this education recognition segment. These money prizes are for students who have either completed the HSC, completed a short course, graduated with a certificate or diploma from TAFE, or graduated from university or similar. This is proudly sponsored by Sir George, Sir Peter, Nor Cynthia, Nor Sir Murray, and I believe Sir Gigi as well from the Karen Community Sydney. It's also sponsored by Starts and the John and Betty Collins Education Fund. Brady?
When he like for a plural Joe the Palator C. Mege, the University Mercama, he can know owner, but then but he couple la regular Bahara current refugee make the Kakama when but he can know what I can be he about a clever and love when be dog, but not with him, do what in law.
Fantastic. Congratulations to all of the students, and thank you again to the generous contributions from Sir George, Sir Peter, Nor Cynthia, and Nor Samure, Starts and the John and Betty Collins Education Fund. Brady? So we have another song item to entertain you. This is Deborah Tin with a song that she has made for us. She is the director of the International School of Music in Wentworthville. Brady?
He like a pocket or soup, directly or a color me what I have mandala animal, not diborama. Let Tawina whenever Kanata.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Regular attendees would be very familiar with Deborah and her beautiful voice as she often performs at our New Year's celebrations. Brady?
Besilu abano dramu diborama, awe tau da glume, dar bloko la to glu pola tau da le kenyan tau ini besilu bado mana.
We would now like to welcome Mahn Orlando, the Vice President of the Australian Karen Organisation, for the closing remarks and vote of thanks. Bready?
Okay, do kwemu bedi ma only do le bakala IKO Vice President ma pa business no kira ga we ta do kludi do da sibisi pone do.
I want to thank Cranial Celebration Committee, Sydney, for giving me a privilege to give a closing remark and vote of thanks today. First of all, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Mr. John Rock, convener of the 2760 Cranial Celebration Committee, Sydney, for his opening speech. We want to thank Mr. Paul Power, CEO, Refugee Council of Australia, for not only giving us an encouraging speech today, but also for working together with ethnic community from Burma in lobbying and advocacy campaign for improvement of human rights in Burma. We want to thank Ms. Melissa Montero, CEO of Community Migrant Resource Center, CMRC, for not only her encouraging speech today, but in helping our refugees in settling in Sydney. We want to express our thanks to Mr. Chris Sidoti, EC member of Human Rights Council of Australia, former member of the United Nations Independent International Fact-Finding Mission of Myanmar, IMFM, for his summary on activities of IMFM, and also for his view on the political situation in Burma. I want to thank Tramusibura Singh, Chairman of the Karen National Union Concern Group, KNU-SCG, former President of Karen National Union, for her cranial greeting and encouraging speech. I want to thank Solwin Wu, National President, Australia Karen Organisation Incorporated, for the Karen update. We have learned more clearly picture of what really happened in Burma, the ceasefire talk, and present political situation and human rights situation in Burma. I want to thank Mr. Gary Culture from Service for the Treatment of Torture and Trauma Survivor, STARTS, for assisting us since we start to organize the cranial meeting and provide us with all necessary assistance, such as technical support of Zoom meeting and valuable advice. Without his support, this Grand New Year celebration may not be a success. I want to congratulate all the recipients of Grand Education Recognition and wish all the success in their career. Last but not least, I would like to thank our MCs, all subcommittees members of Karen National Union Committee, musician, performer, and all participants. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, New Year represents hope and expectation for the new thing ahead and the endeavoring for our fulfillment of our national goal and aspiration. The Karen people have struggled over 70 years for justice, equality, freedom for the Karen and also other oppressed ethnic people of Burma. At present, we are still in a state of struggle to gain our political and national goal. We have learned from Mr. Solwin Wu's speech that Although ceasefire agreement was signed 8 years ago, there is almost no improvement for the livelihood of ethnic people. Recently, fighting escalating in our Karen area, and many thousands of people are fleeing from their villages. Karen people around the world are much concerned by this atrocity committed by these Burmese military. We want to request the Australian government to pressure the Burmese government, especially the Burmese military, to commit itself to real change, to stop all military activities in ethnic area, to stop all atrocity committed by their troops. We want to urge the Australian Foreign Minister and the government to condemn the Burmese military for the escalating of violence in Eastern Karen area and other areas. Many thousands of refugees fleeing their villages. Today, our hearts are with all those brothers and sisters and others who have suffered because of the Burmese military. On this occasion, I want to say to my fellow Karen people who have the privilege to settle in this country, you have the opportunity to develop your life. You have equality, freedom, opportunity for prosperity. Make the most of these opportunities to improve your life. Be a good law-abiding citizen. Never forget the benefit this country gave you, and always keep in mind that you are indebted to this country. At the same time, I urge you to remember our fellow Karen people back home, for they are still under the Burmese military oppression. We have an obligation to free them from oppression. To the young people, I urge you to study hard and get a good education. Only when you gain knowledge can you truly develop your family and help your people back home. In conclusion, I would like to say that New Year time is a time to be hopeful for the best to come and to make our own resolution for our lives, our family, our country, and our nation. Therefore, I would like to encourage our people, let us make our decision and determination to work together in this new year with unity in whatever we are, in wherever we are, we can, so that a free and fair system of justice, equality, and long-lasting peace to prevail in Burma. May the blessing and tidings of 2760 Karen New Year be with you all. Happy and prosperous Karen New Year to all of you. Mani oke, Hudu Buddha oku opoetiki. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahn Orlando, for the closing remarks and vote of thanks. And thank you to Mahn Orlando, Saul Winu and Mahn John Rock for their dedication to supporting Karen in Australia and around the world. Brady?
Simply by the only dollar that the simply for a quarter. Double simply was got the Ura Manchar or the hill of that, let the Karen year blowing out of but a killer, either directly get all out of it, sleep at the Convener.
As we are coming to the end of our program today, we would like everyone to please be upstanding for the Australian and Karen national anthems.
Okay, but the clean head do a little more. Killing about one on it, but guess a third of a hit of your shoe, can you do not Diana? Not that we.
For we are one
Wonderful. Thank you to the Sydney Combined Karen Youth, Deborah Tin, and the Sydney Friday Group for their performance of the national anthems. That was really fantastic editing, and it just goes to show that even though you weren't able to rehearse and perform together, these circumstances have actually allowed you to be even more creative with your performance. Brady? Wonderful. Thank you to the Sydney Combined Karen Youth, Deborah Tin, and the Sydney Friday Group for their performance of the national anthem.
Friday group the parlor papo ma the kora kura besini baganyo poti pakele papo the tawi the ko kanyo dogli tawi mege Australia dogli the tawi mege for besiba the ko na re la mo kanyo ni sa do keso ni la to kita nyo to kuda ku o pwe pudi puda ko na de ke w.
So we've come to the end of our program today. Thank you again to our honoured guests and keynote speakers, to the leaders and community members from different ethnic groups from Burma, to the service providers and our friends from the Australian community, to all of the members of the Karen community in Sydney and around the world who have joined us. Thank you for celebrating with us today.
Betilo dalam medico mamir deba satana kene pa people do da kweda lolo sole pa la ko nyan tadole zoom di do ko besiba ko na gade te medale ko nyo bolo Sydney ma pa khu ko do nyo bolo ko do binya no besilo se ko bala he ba pho ma ko da le ta sita do da he ma de pa ke lo ko besiba tu ko no gade no w.
So thank you to the Karen New Year Celebration Committee, to our moderators today, Miskui and Thule, and we'd especially like to thank Gary Karcher from Starts, who has been absolutely instrumental in our celebration today. So the live feed will now end and recording will stop. However, this Zoom call will remain open until 2 for whoever wants to unmute themselves to stay on and chat and have lunch together. Brady, would you like to say that as well?
Lo siliwa lo so da le we betrageri mege chikwi mege da le tuli ni pamo le pa khuma ko ku da ya mege ku da Tasneem ma kle ke che pa khuma ko da ba wida su ma ba ke ba le ai do pa khuma ko di ko na ko on le kinari dia do da ko lunch ma me su do le o le ni ti nya ba ye ko da di le ma si le ko na de ma.
Thanks again and Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, more Kanyani Tava, King Tony Yakusi, Sunya, Mokason about the Kuda Kutumita, love where our love where I make a nyopo, the Pala, Bapo, the Commander, the Huda, no, no, Buni, maybe that's what I see you do about the Wicon, and then logs, I saw you back on a